I've always considered myself a relatively optimistic person who tries to see the bright side of things. Maybe that's because I grew up in the vibrant, spirited city of New Orleans. Despite our issues with crime and poverty, there's an effervescent energy to this place that naturally instills a sense of joy and resilience. My name is Tina Broussard, and I'm a junior at Frederick Douglass High School. At 17 years old, I'm what you'd call an old soul, wise beyond my years from being raised by my no-nonsense single mom who worked double shifts to give me every opportunity she never had. With her fierce determination as my example, I've stayed focused and driven, balancing academics with cheerleading and art club, while dreaming of getting into LSU's prestigious visual arts program after graduation. When I stayed after school that fateful day in the spring of 1998 for art club, I had no idea my youthful optimism was about to be shattered by an encounter that would change me forever. I took my usual route down the main hallway, as most of the other students had already left for the day. That's when I noticed a foul odor hanging in the air. It was just after 5 p.m. when I pulled into the school parking lot for my usual after-class art club meeting. As I walked down the eerily empty hallway, I noticed a putrid smell hanging in the air, like something had rotted and died. I felt a chill run down my spine as I approached Mr. Hendrix's classroom. The stench seemed to be seeping out from the door that was slightly ajar. Against my better judgment, I slowly pushed it open. The sight that met me was straight out of a horror movie. Mr. Hendrix was lying mutilated on his desk, eyes open and glassy, throat savagely ripped out. Dark crimson blood was pooled all over the floor. I gasped and staggered back, my hand covering my mouth as waves of nausea hit me. That's when I noticed a shadowy figure hunched over the body, feasting on the remains. At first, I thought it was a wild animal, but as it turned towards me, I realized it was a man, eyes bulging and feral, shredded tatters of clothing clinging to his emaciated frame. But worst of all was his bloody mouth and hands, ripping into the viscera like a ravenous beast. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't scream. I could only watch in sheer petrified horror as this thing lifted its head and fixed its hollow, haunting gaze directly on me. Then it opened its mouth, letting out a gurgling snarl as it started lurching towards me, entrails dangling between its teeth. My body finally unfroze, and I turned to run, but the creature was shockingly fast. I felt its bony fingers clutching at my backpack as I sprinted down the hall, clawing and tearing as it tried to drag me back. I could hear its ragged panting and animalistic growls right behind me as I desperately looked for an escape. Up ahead, the double doors leading outside were propped open just a crack. Putting on one last burst of speed, I hurtled through them and out into the parking lot, risking a glance over my shoulder to see the deranged man howling and snarling as he furiously pounded against the metal doors that thankfully held him inside. I sprinted across the asphalt to my car, hands shaking uncontrollably as I tried to get the keys in the lock. Finally, the door opened and I threw myself inside, peeling out of the parking lot and leaving behind that nightmarish scene. My heart was racing and my mind was spinning with horrific images that would be seared into my memory forever. I still can't comprehend what I witnessed. Some starving, feral human reduced to animalistic depravity and violence. Was he homeless? Mentally ill? A cannibalistic psychopath? Whatever, or whoever that monster was, It completely shattered my illusion of safety. I can't stop thinking that I could have been his next victim if I had opened that door even a minute earlier. This isn't the stuff of fiction. Real monsters are walking among us, acting on their most depraved urges. I don't know if I'll ever feel secure going back to that school again. The haunting memory of those soulless eyes and that inhuman snarl will torment me for the rest of my life. Because on that chilly spring evening, I came face to face with the terrifying depths of human evil and insanity. I never thought it would happen to me. I was just an ordinary high school student, studious and quiet, with big dreams of going to college and starting a career in science. I was always polite and respectful to my teachers, eager to learn and make my family proud. I never imagined that one of my teachers would betray that trust in the most horrific way possible. It all started innocently enough. Mr. Thompson was my chemistry teacher, a charming and well-respected educator who always seemed to have a kind word for everyone. He took an interest in me and my studies, offering to help me with extra tutoring and guidance after class. At first, I was grateful for the attention and support, believing that he just wanted to see me succeed. But then, things took a dark turn. Mr. Thompson started making inappropriate comments about my appearance, telling me how beautiful and mature I was for my age. He began to touch me in ways that made me uncomfortable, brushing against me in the hallways and lingering a little too long during our tutoring sessions. I tried to ignore the warning signs, telling myself that he was just being friendly and supportive. One day, after everyone else had left the classroom, Mr. Thompson cornered me and locked the door behind him. I felt a wave of fear and dread wash over me as he advanced towards me, his eyes filled with a hunger that I didn't recognize. I tried to scream, but he clamped a hand over my mouth, silencing me before I could alert anyone to what was happening. I won't go into the details of what happened next, the pain and shame that I felt as Mr. Thompson violated me in the most brutal and degrading way possible. I tried to fight back, to push him away and escape, but he was too strong and determined to have his way with me. I felt like a helpless child, trapped in a nightmare that I couldn't wake up from. Afterward, he threatened me with even worse consequences if I dared to speak up about what had happened. He warned me that no one would believe me, that I would be labeled a liar and a troublemaker if I dared to accuse a respected teacher of such heinous crimes. I was left feeling alone and isolated, with no one to turn to for help or support. I still have nightmares about that day, waking up in a cold sweat and feeling like I'm being suffocated by the weight of what happened to me. I have tried to push it all to the back of my mind, to pretend like it never happened, but the memories and the scars are still there, a constant reminder of the evil that lurks in the hearts of those we trust the most. I hope that my story will serve as a warning to others to be vigilant and to speak out against those who seek to prey on the innocent and vulnerable. I never imagined anything like this could happen at my safe suburban middle school. My name is Riley, and up until that fateful day, I was just your typical 8th grader, goofy, awkward, and obsessed with skateboarding and video games. School was my second home, the place where I spent most of my time with my tight-knit crew of middle school buds. We all dreamed of ruling the hallways when we finally became high school freshmen the next year. Little did I know that by the end of this semester, my childlike vision of the world would be shattered forever by an unspeakable evil. It started as a pretty usual Tuesday after classes let out. While most kids rushed to the exits, I lingered behind with my friend Marcus to shoot a few baskets in the gym before his mom picked us up. The hallways were practically deserted, and an eerie silence hung in the air. That's when we started hearing faint noises coming from the band room at the end of the corridor. At first, I thought maybe the music teacher had stayed late, but then I recognized the sounds. Heavy objects crashing and clattering, mixed with tormented screams and pleas. Marcus and I froze, locking eyes with a mix of confusion and fear. The hair stood up on the back of my neck as I fought the instinct to bolt. We should find the janitor or someone, I whispered, my voice quivering. Suddenly, a harrowing, blood-curdling cry pierced the air, echoing down the hallway. We didn't need any more motivation to run at that point. With our hearts pounding, we pelted towards the exit as fast as our legs could carry us. That's when the gym doors ahead burst open with an explosive bang. A hulking, broad-shouldered figure charged through, silhouetted against the fluorescent lights. As it staggered into view, Marcus and I's jaws dropped in shock and revulsion. It was like a scene from a slasher film. The man, if you could even call him that, was bare-chested and grotesquely disfigured. His face was covered in weeping lesions and scars, with one milky white eye dangling loose from its socket. His torso looked to have been torn open and crudely stitched back together, angry red gashes oozing and festering. Clutched in his mangled hands was an axe, the blade slick and dripping with fresh blood. Shredded scraps of clothing and long tufts of bloody hair clung to its edge, dragging behind as the creature stomped forward. Marcus screamed, barely finding his voice. I just stood there, utterly petrified, as the abomination's empty gaze landed on us. It opened its mouth, letting out a gurgling, inhuman screech that echoed down the halls and drilled into my brain. Images of disemboweled bodies and severed limbs flashed through my mind as it broke into a lumbering charge, dragging the axe carelessly through the tiled floor with an ungodly screech. My primal survival instincts finally kicked in, and I grabbed Marcus's hand, turning to flee. We sprinted back down the hallway, the monster's thundering footsteps and razor-sharp respirations closing in behind us. I could feel hot, rancid breath on the back of my neck as we hurtled around a corner, strewing papers and debris across the floor in our wake. Up ahead, the double doors to the exit were just ahead. Freedom was just a few agonizing strides away. But then, a locker door whipped open, clipping my shoulder as I ran past. I lost traction, slamming to the ground as Marcus kept running. Before I could even look back, a huge shadow covered me as the beast descended with another otherworldly shriek. I rolled over, staring into its gaping, vacant maw, ready to end my life in one savage swipe. But then, the axe was suddenly ripped from its grasp by a tall, imposing figure who was restraining the monster from behind. The science teacher, Mr. Davis, had a look of primal, gritty determination as he wrestled the flailing creature into submission. For a long moment, we all just remained there, me frozen on the floor, Mr. Davis straining to overpower the abomination, and the creature thrashing and emitting unearthly cries that felt like they pierced my very soul. I remained there, still shell-shocked, even as the police arrived, and started cordoning off the scene. As paramedics checked me out and took my statement, my gaze kept drifting back to that thing, whatever it truly was, and those hollow, inhuman eyes. How could this have happened at my cheerful, safe middle school in the idyllic suburbs? What kind of deranged force could have brought such an unfathomable nightmare into our lives? These are the haunting thoughts that only grew louder as we later learned what the creature had done to the band instructor and several students who were still missing. In one cataclysmic day, the fragile innocence of childhood that all kids cling to was torn away from me